Good morning, everybody, to people in Asia Pacific, to people in Singapore, Australia, afternoon, I believe. And good morning to people in India. We had a small problem in kicking off stuff, so we are possibly a couple of minutes late. Apologies for that. And so let's get on with it. And so this is so a lot of you all have been attending the webinar that IAB Tech Lab has been doing. So this is the first of the series of the webinars that we are doing in terms of the post 3P architecture, the emerging scenarios in the post third-party cookie architecture. And as you all know, it's a matter of time where we reach a turning point where cookie may not be the default methodology to track and do business in digital advertising industry. So without much ado, let me present Gowthaman or G-Man as we call him, is the star today in terms of his the star speaker today, and he has been with WPP and for a long almost one of the first guys to move on to the digital industry from the conventional set of industry, and now presently heads the company called Aqilliz, and he will be telling us about how the distributed ledger technology approach can be used for reimagining the identities. And we would, so on the panel also are me, I lead the Director APAC for IAB Tech Lab, Shelly, who is the Senior Vice President for Products and Global Programs, and Jonas, who is the Tech Lead at IAB Australia. So we'll all will be assisting, G-Man to take him through this presentation. Over to you, G-Man. Sorry, yeah. Before we head to the stuff, some what we say as fire drill. So all of you who are in attendance, please follow your fire drill. But to kick it off, what we will do is take 5 minutes to present things about IAB Tech Lab to just set the context. Then we will hand it over to G-Man, and then we will have a question and answer session among all of us. So very quickly, IAB Tech Lab, our mission statement, engage global members. It's a community. And what we do is develop foundational technology. So it's a member-driven organization. It's a non-profit organization. The non-profit allows, so members allow us to share the costs, and the non-profit allows us to be unbiased and develop the trust that we need to build the entire digital media ecosystem. We are a kind of the body in terms of digital advertising, which has been the keeper of standards for digital advertising technology. Yes. What we do is we build standards. We build things that help you interoperate. You must have heard about OpenRTB, the VAST framework, the Open Measurement SDK, the CIMET framework for interactivity. You must have heard about transparency and consent framework, which we developed with IAB Europe. So these are global standards that drive efficiency and interoperability between organizations. What are technical standards? Technical standards are like the Bluetooth, the CD Blu-ray technologies, which help you, the USB port, which standardize things across hardware, across software, so that you are able to interoperate, concentrate on your core offerings and build technologies relate to that, while the accessory technologies or accessory things which help you interoperate are taken care by a standard. This helps reducing cost and you concentrating on your own business while interoperability is guaranteed. Yes, Shelly. So very quickly, what are our 4 foundational pillars? These are our 4 foundational pillars where we have been developing assets: the identity, data, and privacy, the brand safety, ad experiences and measurement, and programmatic effectiveness. You have been, so this webinar is in the series of identity, data, and privacy as the industry reaches a turning point where we will call the pre-cookie era and the post-cookie era. Brand safety. So we have several kind of assets, the sellers.json, in terms of which helps identify the sellers that you operate with. The ads.txt, which helps publishers declare the partners that they work with. This all ensures brand safety. I will not go through each of these step of boxes, but what it does tell you is that we kind of operate our build standards in almost all facets of digital advertising. Yes, Shelly, next slide. What we are our product priorities, again, without going into too much details, just concentrating on the left side, we define and inform. We are working on addressability. You must have heard about Project ReARC. We are providing technical standards for privacy to provide compliance for local laws, because you understand even in Indonesia, India, and a lot of geographies in Asia Pacific are coming up with laws. We are trying to build a global framework that serves as a backbone for implementation of all these laws. Promote supply chain transparency, that's possibly a continuing work, and improve measurement and attribution accuracy and consistency. This time we are going to be more focused on connected TV and taking it to the website. So these are the priorities for 2021. Going ahead, Shelly. We are a global organization. We are a one organization. We do not have chapters because technology is borderless. So we believe IAB Tech Lab has a global role to play, because websites, internet operates on a global standard. So we try to bring, and that's our vision in trying to bring a one global standard across the entire world. But obviously there will be extensions and customizations for stuff. I'm based out of India in New Delhi, and I'm helping this region to participate in this global revolution. Board of directors, almost the who's who of digital arena. Let me not go through it, but it's everybody contributes, and so we are very thankful to our board members to help us in this endeavor. Just one quick stuff. There is the IAB brand name is well known into the market, but there are two different organizations, the IAB and IAB Tech Lab. IAB usually operates through various chapters or geographical chapters. For example, there is an IAB Europe, there is an IAB UK, there is an IAB France. In this area, we have an IAB Australia, we have IAB Singapore, we have an IAB Hong Kong. While IAB supports sales and marketing, concentrates on education and certification, research, policy, guidelines and business standards, events and networking. IAB Tech Lab is more focused on product development, standardization of protocols, software and tools, compliance programs, and education events. So together, we try to support the entire needs of the industry. Yes, Shelly. So G-Man, I will hand it over to you. Please, you are the best champion of your tech.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for giving me an opportunity, Shivain, Shelly, and JJ. It's been an exciting life and time for us in the last 18 months at Aqilliz when we set it up. And when the announcement came about the deprecation of cookies and what's going on in the industry today, we just thought we will share with you an innovative approach on solving this problem and building a trusted ad tech ecosystem with the world beyond cookies. It's a defining moment for the ad industry today. All engagement systems will be removed of all third-party cookies, and the availability of identifiers will be reduced by end of 2021. I think we probably have another 250 days to find a solution, so to speak. So what it means is, from a brand's point of view, they will not have a complete and accurate view of the consumers, both for segmentation and targeting, and even more so that they will not be able to perform any kind of an omni-channel personalization of interactions and attributions. But the reality is that the big tech companies are following their own privacy-preserving regulatory requirements with their own proprietary technologies, but the industry or from a brand point of view, it's not one uniform approach. So there is a struggle in building and bringing all these things together. So what it means for the brands, twofold. One is, I'm just trying to simplify it as discovery and engagement. By the end of this year, brands will struggle to discover their consumers and engage with them online. The privacy preserving personalization is going to limit or control the way they can look at using their first party data in a compliant manner. And not to ignore, as such, we already had a lot of questions about the supply chain transparency itself. And here we are adding another layer of complication in solving an identity solution along with an existing impression solution. But the industry is coming together. The industry launched PRAM, Partnerships for Responsible Visible Media, with all the leading members governing it. The way we are seeing it right now is, if I were to simplify this problem into what is the way the industry is thinking about it, I believe there are 4 potential routes that's emerging out. And I'm trying to simplify it by putting it across as 2 axes. One is, do you know your consumer, or can you activate? If each and every enterprise, whether it is a brand or a publisher, start asking these 2 questions and say, if I know all my consumers in an authenticated manner, and if as an enterprise we have a CRM or a CDP or any kind of a structured data management program, and if we tick yes to both, we believe it probably will form 10% of the universe, which is quadrant 4. A large part of the organizations today belong to quadrant 1, which is not many of them know their own consumers, and not many of them have their own data management programs as well. So so there are 4 routes to take, which is where we are today. One is at an aggregate level activation, not bothered about or not able to activate at an individual level, which is where the most popular Flock, as everybody knows about in the industry, comes in, and that is pertaining to only Google environment, but every other platforms will have to do some kind of a cohort-based management for the first quadrant, 50% of the business. The other 2 quadrants are slightly more, I would say, progressive or more towards attribution, but still there are 2 paths. One is, when an enterprise has data, but not consumer data, but a lot of insights, they can bring it to the gardens, and the gardens will use it to attribute it in some form or the other. Or you can also have some kind of data sets and you carry it to the different gardens, and they can do slightly better return path attribution. But the holy grail is when the brand and the enterprise know their consumers, and that can be used for activation with full visibility for attribution as well. And that's where we believe the industry is now trying to find a solution, because when the cookies deprecate, there are 4 different routes to take. And so what's the ask? It's from an IAB's perspective, and which I've tried to capture it on one screen, is when a publisher know the consumer, and when a marketer know the consumer, and they can be activated in a secure and safe manner across the third-party members in the supply chain, what is required in the world beyond cookies when the regulations comes to play is a responsible use of consumer-provided identifiers, and they allow the third parties to execute on their behalf. That's point 1. And point 2 is, any passing content or contextual as first-party attributes that are consistent for both cohorts and code development, because it's important that both cohort development and code development needs to be done in a manner where not just 2 third parties, the entire ecosystem should be compatible enough to ensure that that supply chain is consistent and interoperable. So these are the 2 big questions industry is grappling today, not just the identifier itself. And IAB Tech Lab, Shelly is on the call as well. A lot of effort has been going behind standardizing the taxonomy and data transparency, and more importantly, consent and compliance mechanism. So the challenge we have today in the industry is captured in one slide here, is about consented consumers and their identifiers, how we execute and activate it across the entire supply chain, right?
Yeah. G-Man, I just want to add a little color to that slide. Like you've captured it very well, that, when you have a consented identified consumer, and that's what I think the rest of the presentation will be talking about. Overall, the Tech Lab solution has like kind of, we are developing solutions for all categories of consumers, those who want to get identified and are willing to give consent to advertising, those that are not willing to give consent, which are anonymous, where there may be solutions like contextual targeting, etc. And then they're in the middle who are giving some kind of consent, or through browser or other technologies where we're creating aggregated cohorts like the privacy sandbox and other solutions. So that's kind of the whole spectrum. And today, of course, we are focusing on identified consumers who have provided consent.
Thanks, Shelly. So I just wanted to dig deep into this with one chart where we talk about certain things. Today the industry is predominantly focusing on the various identifiers, whether it is UID 2.0 or ID5 or NetID or Brightpool or many identifiers. But it's important to understand the critical dependencies in identity management. I've tried to capture the most important ones here. That's first one is the encryption and salting. Salting essentially is differential privacy in some form, which essentially means that the identity is not traceable back. And the design needs to be decentralized. And more importantly, whatever we do with these identities, it needs to capture and convey the preferences across the supply chain between the publisher and the marketer. There needs to be a transparency and consent portal on both sides of the supply chain. It needs to be managed by an independent third party. It needs to be non-biased, it should be auditable, and it should be able to detect fraud. So if somebody has to tick all the boxes, and when an ID needs to run across the entire supply chain, our view is that it's pretty close to some of the factors or technologies that runs a distributed ledger technology. So I've just contrasted that with another chart on the left side, where we are moving from a need for a distributed database to a distributed ledger, which essentially means that the various stakeholders in the supply chain operate on a similar data sets so that they can capture and convey the consumer preferences seamlessly. It is decentralized, and it ensures that the transparency and consent management is maintained on both sides of it. So a distributed ledger helps in bringing everybody onto the same state. Cryptography linked record of transaction helps in encryption and salting. And for a moment, if we ignore the blockchain bit and move to a permission blockchain where all the node owners are known to everybody, you are creating a structure that helps in managing identities comprehensively across supply chain, and not just the identifier itself. So the focus of the discussion is not about ID per se, it's about activating the ID across the supply chain. And here I've sort of picked up one of the often used framework to say, when do you need a distributed ledger? I mean, when everybody talks about a DLT or blockchain, it's easy to either throw it or accept it. And I've sort of tried to use some kind of a schema to ask ourselves the question and see whether it fits in or not. And if you look at it here, do multiple partners share data? If the answer is no, no need to do anything, use your own server. But in reality, in our situation now, we will need to have multiple partners amending data. And there is a need to build trust amongst the stakeholders. And there's a need to have a verification requirement across the supply chain. So it ticks all the boxes for the need for a distributed ledger. And that is our belief at Aqilliz, that why shouldn't we use this approach to solve this problem? And so we have built a solution, which is what I'm going to talk about, is a safe and secure and a compliant ecosystem that enables the brands to discover their consumers and engage with them online. It's designed in a manner where it's friction free. It removes all the barriers for activating and engaging with data sets. Credentials are secure in particular manner, and it is customized for a brand or for a marketplace built for a brand or an advertiser, and it helps to collaborate and activate not just identities, but in the same way it also solves impressions and attribution. So it is, I'm not saying, JJ was telling me sometime back, are you having a silver bullet? But it is not a silver bullet, but the structure helps to solve all the problems across identities, impressions, and attribution, and it's an enterprise level installation. So how does it work? We have patented a technology which brings in the best of three different techniques: differential privacy, federated learning on a ledger. So it is server to server based. It doesn't move, no data is moved out to any central location. It's queried. I'll talk about it in detail. And it ensures that all the stakeholders have a concurrent record of processing all the activities, and they get a universal view of a single source of truth. So how does it work? It's a simple schema here. All the stakeholders in the supply chain have their own off-chain databases. I've shown it as organization A, B, and C for simplicity. They have their own data sets depending upon the permissions and the controls, salting or differential privacy techniques. Data is queried through a PQS or a private query server, and those queries are linked across all the three organizations, and the consensus program is built for reconciliation or activation, and that is then handed over to the activation protocol. And at a periodic level, whatever is the action that is being agreed on is put in the public blockchain for immutability. So that's the principle. At the heart of it, it's a decentralized database made available for analytics, and it ensures that all the participants can, in a trusted manner, exchange data. And I'm going to show another chart that's slightly more complicated, but in reality, what I wanted to show to you is that you can think of the 5 boxes on the top as the supply chain partners, DSPs, the SSPs, the verification partner, any one of them. They have their own separate data vault. The data is queried for a particular activation, and whatever happens as an activation is in the middle layer. It's a permissioned ledger, and all activities happen there. And at a periodic level, it goes to a public blockchain, and our architecture is built for interoperability. It can work on any public blockchain, so we are not trying to link it to one of them. It opens up opportunities. And the federated querying layer in the middle, since it is working on a set of nodes that is already prescribed, and it is going to work on data sets from the server itself, there are no conventional questions about is it fast or slow, will it work for an RTB related questions or not, because it's built for such scale and speed, because we're taking from server to server. I'm just trying to explain it in a slightly more detailed fashion for those who have some questions. Typically, it's a start with whether it is a brand or a marketer. They have their own DMP or a CDP or some kind of a data management platform. From there, secure data storage for anonymization of data is done at a storage level in their own premises. And then those data sets are queried for analytics across the supply chain participants in a federated manner. That's where analytics happen. And whatever analytics is being done is recorded in a distributed ledger, so that all participants are comfortable that the data sets are analyzed in a uniform manner. It could be impressions, it could be identities, or it could be any other analytics that can be done, including measurement as well. And then those data sets are being used for both optimization and activation. It's the way the journey is flowing. And why do we think this kind of a structure is very important? Primarily because many organizations today have the first box on this side. There are bunkers, there are safe havens, and there are many other solutions in which data is being anonymized and salted and made available for analytics. But when it comes to activating the data, and when the data is being activated in consent for both sides of the player, as we were talking about it earlier, it needs to be maintained at a place where both the primary owner, whether it is the marketer or the publisher, they need to record that activity as per the compliance requirements, the section 30 of GDPR, as what they call as ROPA. And the distributed ledger enables that provision. So when two entities enrich their first-party customer data sets, both need to maintain the same record of enrichment in their own respective content management platform. And that's why you need this additional layer that helps in making it happen. So today, as I said, all technical environments are currently built for internal resolution of identities. But when it comes to external activation, it requires a distributed ledger or a shared ledger for sure, so that the content management is updated on both sides. If you do it at an aggregate level, which is where the lack of trust has been built, is coming in, whether it is even at the impressions level, therefore it is going to only create more confusion in this subsystem, not just with impressions and now with identities. And we have an opportunity here to solve the problem by having a shared ledger. So what it means in a figurative manner is, today the various stakeholders in the ad tech ecosystem, they talk to each other, they share information, and it's creating more confusion and not able to help everybody in the ecosystem to sort it out in a concurrent manner in terms of maintaining data sets. A distributed ledger enabled approach ensures that all the stakeholders are able to take data from a central source in which they are trustworthy, they are trusted, and all analytics that happens there is made available for them. And that makes life a lot easier and simpler and more optimized for everybody. I've tried to put it in a simpler flowchart. There are 8 steps to this process. The logos mentioned here are only for demonstration purposes. Don't think that trade desk is there already. I just want to show it as any DSP here. What it means is stage 1 is whether it is a brand or a publisher. You can have many publishers. They can, as per their own content management platform, data is collected, normalized, and stored in their own server. And from their own storage, the data is queried between the brand and the publisher, which essentially means that the identity is queried after necessary salting. And that query is then rendered anonymous and non-traceable through a differential privacy techniques in stage 4. And those profiles are then used for activation. And we work with, we have a strategic partnership with Brightpool as one of our ID solutions. So those ID solutions are slapped onto it. That will be given to a DSP, and then you activate the campaign. When that campaign is being activated, since everybody in the supply chain has the same data set, when an activation happens, both the brand and the publisher can maintain the record of what's been done with it in the provenance ledger, which is one of the critical dependencies when it comes to transparency and consent management. So brands and the publishers can safely and securely exchange their first-party data for activation across the supply chain. And that's the 8-stage process. We have simplified it. And we are working with few customers, but I will leave it to our Q&A in which I can answer most of this. So it's a commercially viable business model. It's a SaaS solution. It can be deployed at the customer and their participants and their ecosystem with an annual subscription fee, and the installation is friction-free. I'm more than happy to talk about it later with any of them any queries. So here is a novel approach which builds a trusted ad tech ecosystem for the brands and the publishers when they have first-party data sets and that can be activated. That's our approach. Thank you, Shivain and JJ and Shaili for giving me this opportunity to talk about it.
Thanks, G-Man. So I think I have a couple of questions, and but what I will do is I will start with Siddharth. Siddharth Dasgupta has put a question, so I'll possibly read out his question first. Is the marketing and advertising industry ready for adopting DLT as a backend data platform? So it's an operating question to you, G-Man.
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. The long answer is they're all trying to see if it's secure or not. And the standard query or worry they have is that is it fast, it is scalable, because conventionally people immediately jump into Bitcoin and blockchain and have a baggage of transactions per second. But to answer to Siddharth's question, The solution is ready. It is for the enterprises to start trying it out right now.
Okay. I will go back to a bit more philosophical question. So what I understand from your presentation at this point of time is the principle of universal IDs or principles of creating universal identifiers. You are saying that I agree to that principle of maintaining universal identifiers, and all I'm doing is offering the blockchain technology as a way of management of it. So in principle, is it different from the universal identifier approach?
It is UID 2.0 approach is pretty much the same. We are just building on the same approach, Shivain. UID 2.0 listed down some of the critical dependencies that's required to make it happen. And we are only using that to show what needs to be done to bring it to life, whether it is UID or any other identifier that's required in the marketplace. We'll need to tick those boxes. So it is not deviating from what UID is doing. We are only building on it for any identifiers to be deployed.
Okay. There's another question coming in from JJ. Do you want to ask the question by the time I look at Prateek's question?
Yeah, just to build on that. I mean, you know, the criticism is largely in terms of speed and latency in and around all things, particularly RTB, for a solution like this. And yes, you say this isn't the silver bullet. There's a whole set of capabilities that businesses have to invest in first. But could you explain a little more about how you manage the areas via DLT or blockchain with regards to where speed is required and speed isn't, just so the audience understands?
Thanks, JJ. I think it's a very important question for many of them, and it's got implications to the previous questions as well. If you look at our approach, we are talking about an off-chain database that's being queried for reconciliation or alignment amongst the shareholders who are part of the ecosystem. So the RTB or whatever is the activity that happens at scale and speed is happening at the respective enterprises. We're only going to query at a periodic level to reconcile, to give it to them on what's happening to them. So it's not a blockchain system on which bidding happens. I just want to clarify that. The bidding happens and the activity happens in the respective enterprises and their actions. So we are not talking about a massive distributed ledger infrastructure on which RTBs or any other kind of activity is going to be built. We are going to only at a periodic level query that information. We can even do it every half an hour or every 1 hour, depending upon the consistency we require to sync different enterprises. And we're giving and we're providing the participants a consistent view of what has happened, so that the transparency, the consent management, and all the other requirements are maintained in a uniform manner. Today, that's where the biggest challenge is today, whether it is with impressions or with any other activities. So to answer the question, JJ, we're not going to run the entire RTB on the chain. We're only helping enterprises to resolve their actions in a consistent manner across their chosen ecosystem.
Okay, so as to enable a kind of retrospective audit, where all the moving parts are reconciliated between everyone. Yeah.
And the retrospective audit is not retrospective after the campaign is over. You can do it in flight, but not every second. You can do it 3 times.
Not real time. Okay, so that there is a delay.
Right.
I suppose ultimately when we look at it, it just needs testing, right? So you need to be able to bring solutions like this to the table. I mean, is that something that you're looking to do with the work of the various working groups with which IAB Tech Lab are leading, say in Project ReARC, and testing it with various mechanisms like pre-bid? Is this something that you're kind of teeing up?
Thank you for this question. So I'll answer it in 2 parts. One is, as we speak, this approach, we are working with Z5 in India. We just they have tested it in an exhaustive manner. For example, with Z5 in India, all the advertisers of Zifa can bring their first party data sets that can be securely salted and identified and activated on the Zifa platform. And both Zifa and their advertisers maintain their own record of provenance of activities. And we took a lot of time in bringing it to life. So, which essentially means that 75 million profiles or 80 million profiles are already being matched between two enterprises. And that gives a lot of comfort for both of them. And I want to really thank Zifa for giving us an opportunity. So the technology of salting or rendering differentially private data sets to activate is ready, is working. Okay. And part two is we are working with Brightpool as our IT partner right now. And Brightpool is already a member of pre-bid. So that portion of pre-bid partnership is already done. So we are a soft DLT enabling software company. We will work with Brightpool or any other identifiers to be working with pre-bid and not us. So those are two questions. But more importantly, to answer your final question is that we know it works and we have confidence and we have shown it works, but now we want more partners to come and help us bring it to life, because we believe we have a solution. We are more than happy to have advertisers or publishers to try it out. There are few clients who have shown interest, and we are going to run trials in April, May, and June across US, UK, and in Singapore as well. But a blessing from IAB and whatever that's required from a taxonomy standardization or technical specifications, because that's what we want to make it consistent, which is where we really want to work with IAB so that all the stakeholders have consistent code development and cohort development, because then it makes us more scalable. Otherwise, we continue to reinvent the wheel, and it just cranks the engine. Yeah. Shelly, I think that's where we are today. Technical verification, we want to really work closely with IAB Tech Lab on this. And I'm using this forum to really, for those listening, to see we are very happy and keen to have more people try our system out.
So, Jimin, I have a couple of more questions, and all around the theme of viability, practicality. So I'll just read them out. Both Pratik is asking, I think you've partially answered it, but please do add on. How do you make it scalable across brands and publishers to adapt blockchain on SaaS? Are there any incentives? And Neelav is again asking in a similar vein, will the planners with existing knowledge be able to work in this new setup, or do agencies need to start investing in capabilities? So the question comes to us is that while you are doing this stuff, what does the industry players have to do on their end to make this viable?
Okay, I think both are related questions, but I will simplify it in a manner where it's easy. So since we have developed this ecosystem or a software, we will work with the customers or the clients and the participants in covering the initial technological onboarding. Okay, so and I think they might require a little bit of training on this, but it is not rocket science. Neela, so I just wanted to tell you. So, but at the same time, it will require one-time heavy lifting from the enterprises. From our experience, what we have seen is that it takes a month and a half to put the system in place. But once it is running, it's really blissful. It really gives the planner a full view at a granular level of all the campaigns that is running there. Yes, training is required, but more than that, I've lived in the agency world and I've come across this side. My biggest learning in this is there is a DLT baggage which we need to really. Aqilliz have a bigger job to do than anybody else. And immediately people jump into Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and say, oh, it is blockchain, and I only know it's 10 transactions per second. So a lot of education is required to demystify this, to say it's not blockchain, it's distributed ledger technology built for the industry, not for the entire industry, but for a client or a particular ecosystem. And that automatically brings scale and speed. Yes, so we have a lot of work to do, and we are ready to do it. But installation is reasonably okay. If you have to answer that question.
So I have a question. If there's no other question, Shivind, from anyone else.
Yeah, I think I've read out through the entire. No, yes, Neelev's question. Yes, Shelly, please go ahead.
So if I understand it correctly, G-Man, it's basically what you're saying is what you have implemented is a distributed ledger so that companies who with their own databases, their own they can share that data, and then you're using cryptography to create some sort of an anonymity for the IDs so that nobody can know each other's IDs, and then they can match it. So basically the same salt is used across publishers and advertisers, so the matching of that ID happens on that federated query layer is what I'm understanding.
Yes,
so it's not really, that's why I think you were saying that you shouldn't think it's Bitcoin because you're not really writing to a blockchain.
Yeah, that's right.
So your speed and everything is as good as any other database out there.
That's right.
That would be. But you said that you could write to a blockchain. So if I really wanted to immortalize a particular transaction, a particular match of a federated query, I could write to a, I wouldn't use Bitcoin, probably Ethereum or some other blockchain that allows that kind of stuff. So that I could write to that. Of course, there's a cost and all associated with it. But if I really want to immortalize a transaction, I could do that in addition.
Absolutely, Shelly, because the reason we want to give that option is that gives the trust to the participants that there is no collusion between them. So, at a periodic level, a Merkle root of those activities are hashed and stored. So you can always retrieve back for auditing purposes or any other activity purposes later. That gives the trust that nobody is being used or abused in the supply chain. And Shelly, you picked up a good point. I mean, so when there are consortiums being formed, when more than 3 or 4 publishers come together to offer a marketplace, which will eventually become another option going forward, a ledger like this provides all the 3 publishers the trust that why this ad was served with them and not with the other 2, because otherwise they won't join. I mean, so if there is a weaker publication, for the want of a better word, but they have a sharper profile, and that was found in the bid stream to serve the ad, they would like to know why me and why not somebody else. So that's why you need a distributed ledger, which gives all the publisher consortiums the confidence that there's a record of why this impression was found and served with publication A and not B or C. That gives a trust for the consortium to come together as well. Yeah, that's why I think we are focusing more on the privacy rendering techniques and querying it from the respective enterprises, so it's federated in terms of.
And I have one more question, which kind of struck me looking at the diagram, that it does allow you to match, so it allows you to find or retarget customers that the advertiser already knows about. What about the prospecting aspect? Like if as an advertiser, I want to discover new customers, so I don't have any email ID or identifier with me to match with. So do you also support like carrying other data that the publishers provide that they can look for besides identifiers?
Absolutely, we can do, which is where we want to partner with demand side platforms or any DSP partners, because if they are building cohorts or audience segments, these profiles can be used to find the closest match for a cohort or a group. That automatically expands the universe in which we can target. So then we can do prospecting and other stuffs as well, which is why if you remember, if you notice, I wanted to show it as cohort development and code development needs to be something which we need to synchronize and sort of standardize it, so that it's the same cohort that every publisher sees it or every brand sees it. Otherwise, then we will have some other flock for Google and some other cohort somewhere else, and then we will miss the plot. And I see quite a few companies building their own archetypes or cohorts, but I think that's a long way to go, Shelly. I think we are still trying to solve.
For all the listeners, like we actually have the taxonomies that are required for that. So we have 3 taxonomies today: content, audience, and product. So content is mainly to classify content and publishers too. And then audience, of course, defines all the audience segments. And they're pretty comprehensive. They're very recently released, so they're like really updated. And the product taxonomy is for the advertisers to define the product. So if they want to match on a system like yours, if they just want to match a product to a certain audience segment or to a certain content type, then that match could happen without each other party actually knowing the identity of the consumer or the users.
In fact, couldn't agree more. In fact, one of the other things that you want to do is to sort of get your nutrition label architecture and integrate it so that we can actually give a very consistent nutrition label type of
And that's exactly what we've got in our data label project. So if you go to datalabel.org, you can actually post your segments and everything there. And it's like the nutrition label, like what is this? If somebody is saying this is a person who's looking for buying a car in the next 3 months, what does that really mean? What demographics how recently has this data been collected? So all the provenance about that particular segment.
We want to add that feature into this, which we will do next. I'm quite excited about.
Yeah, you should look at those taxonomies, and I would highly recommend using the taxonomy.
So there is JJ. If you have a question, I have one more question. I'll ask the question.
All yours.
So, so my question back to is still at slightly principal level. So you are talking of a solution that works for a consortium. What about this chatter about neutrality in terms of how do you reconcile that? Because ultimately what you are saying is this is a participative consortium-based solution rather than industry-based solution. So I'm just trying to get your views onto that.
Okay, so it's a combination of both, Shivain. Industry-based solutions are required for standardizing data sets, taxonomy, the code development, and all the other tech specifications. That makes life easier for everybody in the participant not to reinvent the wheel. Okay, so consortium is some word which I would like to avoid using it. Because it got a lot of other connotations to it. It's not a consortium. I would say it's an ecosystem built, let's say a private marketplace. That's sort of a lot better to say. If a brand has chosen to have a set of partners that they want to use for activation, and they say these are my preferred DSPs, SSPs, verification partner, and data partner. We facilitate that brand to have those members in the ecosystem to work together. I think that's all we are doing, and that can change because brands have different agencies, different tech partners. So consortium makes it look gigantic. I don't want to get there. Here so, we are.
The question, if I flip that, is if there is somebody making a competitive solution or a competitive distributed ledger approach, which with something else, which has a different set of members, do you have the ability to collaborate with it and create a unified view for everybody?
Absolutely. So at stage 1 is our public blockchain is interoperable. So this system can work with any public blockchain platforms. Differential privacy and federated learning are open source software. So it's not that we have something and others don't have. If somebody wants to build something like this, I would say at the cost of being, you can call it humble or whatever it is, the more the merrier, Shivain. If another company builds this, I'll say a category is being opened and I get a share of it. It's not going to be one and only. If many people build an infrastructure like this, I will be the first person to shake hands with them to say, let's build a DLT solutions together for the industry. So that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I'm just putting out a link out there for our most recently released set of standards under Project ReARC that has been a culmination of like almost 1 year of work with the industry to understand all the use cases and what kind of standards that'll be required to take care of addressability, accountability, the global privacy framework, as well as the data transparency. So the request to all listeners is go through them. We want feedback from the industry so that we can actually create the final set of standards that platforms like Aqilliz can actually use that will benefit everyone for creating more efficiency and better interoperability.
Yeah, look, congratulations, IAB Tech Lab, on getting those first 4 specifications released. Huge project.
If there is any other set of questions, I'm ready to take that. I'll give a minute to everyone to, if anybody else has a question, to type in.
And you can also look forward to some more sessions that we're planning. Keep an eye on the APAC page.
Yes, so I just moved to the next slide, Shelley, if you can. So basically, a lead out to all the listeners. There are 3 more sessions coming up in this series where we are talking about the various emerging approaches to the post third-party cookie scenario. The next one is on 8th of April, similar timing, possibly an hour later, which will be 12:30 Singapore time and 10 o'clock India time. Thank you. Yes. So this is the new APAC page that we have also kind of brought up. This shares all the relevant information to Asia Pacific or this geography in general, in want of any other name or a single word to describe this geography. Please keep coming to IAB Tech Lab /APAC to look for all the relevant information on our activities. And the 3 sessions that we are looking forward to are on the 8th April, which we are doing with media.net, where we'll talk about contextual approach to targeting and digital advertising. On 22nd April, we are partnering with the Trade Desk to bring their point of view on the UID 2. And on 6th May, we are looking at Google to present to their progress in terms of the privacy sandbox, the approach that they have taken. So all of them are relevant approaches. All of them, none of them are silver bullet. Again, as IAB Tech Lab, let me just emphasize, none of these are endorsements from our side at this point of time. It's our endeavor to bring the best at this point of time in terms of emerging approaches. And we are trying to initiate a very healthy discussion in terms of industry. And that is the base objective of Project ReARC, to be able to initiate that level of conversation so that industry moves to this new era of privacy by default. Thank you, Jiman. Yep. Anyway, JJ, any words to add?
Just to say that on that same page, these sessions are hosted and recorded. Shiven is busy editing away and hosting those. So you go about a week later, and you'll see all the past content there that you can keep referring to.
So there was a question about, there was a question about whether we will be sharing the material. So if you go back to this APAC page, you can see all the recordings and the content material of even our previous seminars, webinars, and even this will come up. Give us a 3-4 day just to get it executed.
Thank you.
Thank you, G-Man, once again.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to you, Shelley. It's very late where you are.
That's
well done. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Okay. Bye-bye.